Hello and welcome. My name is Gloria Washington, and I will be the host and moderator for this ADEIL conference session. Thank you for joining us for DIY Applying Cognitive, Social, and Teaching Presence in the online classroom to improve student success, engagement, and satisfaction.
Hey everyone, thank you so much. My name is Sandra Rebior. I'm an associate professor at Ashford University since 2012. I was adjunct before, and I lead the Applied Behavioral Sciences and Environmental Management and Sustainability emphasis. Michelle?
Thank you, Sandra. My name is Michelle Rosser-Majors. I've been with Ashford since 2013. I am the program lead for both the bachelor's and the master's programs of psychology, and have been working with this team since 2017 to bring you what I hope you will find to be very interesting results of applying these strategies in your classrooms. Dr. Harper?
Hi everyone, I'm Yolanda Harper, and I'm a professor of behavioral sciences. I've been full-time with Ashford since 2013, and I teach in the Applied Behavioral Sciences program, the psychology programs, and as well as the Health and Human Services. Great being here. Glad everyone could join us.
Dr. McMahon?
Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Christy McMahon. I am an associate professor in the Department of Health Sciences at Ashford University. I've been with Ashford since 2012, and I'm the program lead for the Bachelor of Arts in Healthcare Administration and the emphasis in health and wellness. So I look forward to speaking with you all today.
Dr. Anderson?
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Stephanie Anderson. I have been at Ashford since 2014. I teach in the Bachelor and Master's of Psychology program here, and I'm really looking forward to the session.
And last but never the least, Dr. Slowinski.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Slowinski. I had the privilege and honor of working with this team in my role as the Dean at Ashford University. However, I'm now with Colorado Technical University as Program Chair for Healthcare Management.
Take it away, Sandra.
You mind moving to the next slide, Michelle? So the agenda that we'll be bringing you today is we're going to introduce the community of inquiry model that formed the basis for our research and for creating this learning series for our faculty that is now available to all faculty teaching, even outside the university. We're introducing the training module, the development, giving you a little bit of history on that, and why instructor presence is so important in the online classroom. We will share definitions and examples of cognitive, social, and teaching presence, and that way you have an easier time identifying effective strategies, but then also applying them within your classroom. We will be sharing some effectiveness highlights pertaining to retention, student success and satisfaction, and instructor satisfaction. And then last but not least, we will share links to those modules, contact info, and open it up for Q&A.
Thank you, Sandra. And let me apologize in advance. I have some allergies happening here in Oklahoma, so hopefully I won't start coughing like crazy here. So prior to presenting the information about instructor presence, and of course our research findings thus far, we felt like it was really important that we elaborate on how this project actually started and then how these results were studied. So this team of researchers and academics that are presenting today were assigned by our college to research and implement an initiative, actually. And the initiative was to increase instructor presence in courses using technology. But the initiative wasn't very specific about what instructor presence actually meant. And so it didn't really align with what we're going to share here, and kind of metamorphosed in that. And so, in fact, identifying the best ways to fulfill this initiative were actually very difficult, but because there are so many predetermined beliefs about what presence is and is not in a contextual educational classroom. And it definitely differs online versus traditional. However, we finally identified what is called the community of inquiry model. And it was an original concept by Garrison and his colleagues. And it included 3 areas of instructor presence. And we felt that when we found this, we were actually onto something. But the finding of this also increased the complexity of our challenge, as it wasn't just one area of presence that we had to deal with, but 3 areas of presence. Because what they stipulated is that all 3 areas of this instructor presence had to actually work together to improve the areas of variables that we're going to be discussing during this presentation. So hence, if we promoted one area of presence only, which would have been so much easier, our results wouldn't have been as significant as what you will learn today they actually were. Also, the model of COI was originally developed almost 20 years ago. And so we felt like what this looked like online would be very different now. And so that was a huge focus of our team, is what would these types of presence actually look like right now with all of these different technology advancements that we've had. In addition, through extensive dialogue with our colleagues throughout our institution, it became apparent that, and I think we all know this, but instructors' comfort levels in the classroom, whether it's professionally or personally, they're very diverse. And that diversity of strategies or comfort of strategy applications was something that we knew we had to address. And so we had to further research all kinds of different examples so that everyone that took this series of modules that we created would have options for their own courses. So the result of our labor actually ended up being a series of modules, which ended up being quite a huge undertaking. And the modules themselves actually started the foundation and explained to the community of inquiry the importance of each area of presence and how they supported one another. And then, of course, the very specific examples about what could be applied within each area of presence. So as we got going and things got out there, actually, I want to say, too, we had a whole lot more enthusiasm from our instructors. And so our initial results from the applications after people were taking these modules just became a really important factor. The instructors were more excited. We're seeing some signs of improved retention, student success. Some of our end of course survey things were changing, the verbiage from our students. And so it all became very intriguing. So actually our university took what was just a college initiative of these modules, and they turned it into a badge indicating that our instructors would be instructor presence certified, and offered it into our entire institution. And so it kind of grew and metamorphosed and was quite a large project. So today, as we move forward, there are a couple of things that we really want to stress. And the first thing is, why this area of focus? Why did it make so much difference? And I'll be handing that over soon to Dr. Yolanda Harper to discuss this why factor. And then as we move forward, Drs. Christy McMahon and Dr. Ravior will discuss the specifics about each area of presence and try to offer a condensed examples. But also later we'll be speaking about opportunities for you to learn about more strategies. Then as we move on, we'll start presenting some of our initial data findings from our research that we conducted based on our pre versus post instructor presence training. So we looked at classes before, we looked at classes after, and did extensive analysis on those. And Dr. Stephanie Anderson and Laura Slowinski will be sharing those things. And so we do hope you'll continue to stick with us so that at the end, we do have that Q&A and at the end, and we are very excited about the results of this project. So Dr. Harper, if you could get us started on the why factor.
Thank you, Michelle, for laying that excellent foundation for our conversation today. So I'd like everybody to reflect. What brings an online course to life? What makes what we do different from simply being an online version of those old school correspondence courses? Well, one difference is that there's a sense of actually being taught by an instructor, a real, live, breathing, feeling person, not just being given a bunch of resources and assignments to go and do at your own pace. There's a sense of that person being knowledgeable, caring, responsive, and engaged, as well as being professional, and who is actually teaching and and going beyond teaching and presenting information, but committed to facilitating learning, who is committed to student success, and who is active in the course in a variety of ways. So much of our work is built on the foundation, as Dr. Rosser Majors mentioned, articulated by Randy Garrison, who published extensively on teaching and online learning. And Garrison does argue that presence is the most important practice in teaching online. In its simplest form, he said that to be present is just to be there. You know, are you there? How are we showing up in our classes? And my colleagues will share specifically about each of the three components that Dr. Rosser Majors mentioned in terms of instructor presence. The information on the next slide highlights some of the foundational research supporting why instructor presence matters. So if you would advance, please. So when students perceive their online instructors are actually there and are actually engaged, we see positive correlations between those perceptions of presence and student persistence. We also see a negative correlation with dropout rates and feelings of isolation, which is good. And there's literature that supports the position that actual actions, the observable behaviors that an instructor engages in, positively impact student learning. There are aspects of instructor presence that my colleagues will discuss that definitely increase students' sense of belonging, and that positively impacts persistence. And at least some of that positive impact can be attributed to providing appropriate and meaningful student-instructor connections, which can help meet some of our students, as well as instructors' needs for human connection in appropriate and professional ways. And next we have Christine, Dr. McMahon, who will orient us with some specific definitions guiding our work.
Thank you, Dr. Harper, and thank you for discussing our why and why instructor and presence is so important in the classroom. And so now I would like to delve deeper into the definitions and some examples of cognitive, social, and teaching presence. So if we could look at the next slide, I'll focus on teaching presence. So teaching presence, it's a combination of factors. It's how the course is set up. It's the bones, it's the framework, if you will. But it's also information provided from our instructors to the students. So no matter what platform you're using, if it's Canvas or Blackboard, when you log in, you want to know where to go and what to do. So effective teaching presence is about, is the announcements in a place where students can easily find them? Can they find their textbook? Are they able to find the work that they're supposed to do for the week and know where to submit it? So effective teaching presence is a clear organization of the classroom. And when that classroom is organized, it's very important to also have diversity and awareness and cultural competency when you're setting up that classroom. But it's not only finding where things are, you also need to address some different learning preferences. So you don't want to just include all text, you want to include some visuals and some audio components as well. So as far as what the instructor should include to enhance teaching presence, that's having clear instructions. Do students know when things are due? Do they know what's expected of them? Should they use APA format, MLA formats? Do they know your late policy? So those clear expectations is also an important part of teaching presence. And so is timely grading feedback. Are they getting that feedback in time to make improvements for the next week? And another important component is behavior modeling. If you expect your students to follow proper APA format, as an instructor, you should also be following proper APA format. So it's very important to model what you want your students to do in the classroom as well. So again, you should also be able to include helpful announcements and just create a welcome and inviting experience for your students. And so on the next slide, we're going to take a look at what teaching looks like for a detailed feedback response. And so what's great about this response here is that the instructor starts right off with the student's name. So that's not only teaching presence, but social presence that I'll talk about in just a little bit. The instructor goes on and covers some specific content areas that the student needs to improve on. But what's also great is she points out some good areas and also provides a reference for that student. So references and knowing to find those is also very important with teaching presence. Students need to know where to go for help if they do need more information. And so at the very bottom then, the instructor, as you can see, models some proper APA format and then opens it up for engagements and say, you know, let me know if you have any questions. So that's a great way to invite that student to engage with you as well. So let's take a look at the next slide and we'll address social presence in more detail. And social presence, you know, it's about engaging with others and making relationships. And sometimes this can be lacking in online classrooms, so that it's very important for the instructor to give your students opportunities to be socially engaged. Now, if any of you had the opportunity to listen to Dr. Swenson's keynote address earlier today, he recognized this as humanizing the classroom. And I really love that term because, you know, this is where you can bring your personality in. This is where you can show your students your passion for your topic, whatever content area expert that you are. So you can bring your passion into the classroom. And we look at 3 areas of social presence. We look at effective, cohesive, and interactive. Now, effective is expressing emotions. And, you know, that could be through a Zoom meeting. You can meet with your students. You can post cartoons or video. Use humor in the classroom. You know, students sometimes, they need a little bit of relief, you know, post a funny cartoon at the end of the week, you know, tell your students, you know, great job, you made it through the week. Some self-disclosure is also very good. You know, I often post an introductory video of myself, let my students know, you know, I'm a working mother too. I know it gets difficult, you know, if you need to talk about your challenges, reach out to me and I'd be happy to talk with you about those. And another area is cohesive social presence, and that's using vocatives and inclusive pronouns. So when you're posting discussions, address your students by name. Let them know that you recognize them, that they are there in the classroom. When you post those discussions, address yourselves as we, you're a team working together. And finally, interactive. You know, we have things like thread elaboration. So when you're in the discussion forums, it's great. A lot of instructors, they post questions, but they forget to go back and recognize that those students, that they answered the question. So close that loop, you know, say, yeah, you did it, you did a great job, or, you know, ask them to elaborate a little more if they didn't quite get it right. So don't forget to go back and recognize your students for making those efforts of answering your questions. And when you are doing your discussion posts, try to include other students within that post, you know, point out somebody else, you know, say, hey, look at John's post. He did a great job talking about these 3 points. So that way you can really fully engage other students into the classroom. And another thing you could do is add video feedback. Instead of just writing out your feedback all the time, add a little video or audio. And, you know, students really love to see and hear you. And when you pull all these together, you create an excellent environment of trust. And so you can all work together. So here's a few examples of social presence. Use inspirational quotes. You can use the introductory slideshow like I show here. Invite students to go to your LinkedIn page. If you're not comfortable with showing your face, you could do something like a Voki, which is shown up here on the top where it shows your voice, but not your images. So if you want to go on to the next slide, here's a few more examples. You can invite students to like your Facebook page, include a cartoon, use an audio announcement. So there are all kinds of different things you can do to increase social presence in the classroom. So next up, I think Dr. Rebior is going to talk about cognitive presence.
Thank you, Christy. Yes, let's talk about cognitive presence, which is the instructor truly engaging his or her students with the content. And how can we do that other than, so let's say we have a great outline of the course, the design is good, social presence is there, teaching presence is there, but now how do we get for students to really dig into the content and really connect with it? And that can be more difficult in an online classroom than it than it can be face-to-face, because we don't see the students. We can't present ourselves. We can't form teams to work together and do work groups. So how can we make those connections? And some of those strategies can be to bring in outside sources and connect them to what we're learning, whether it's a course text or what you're sharing from your expertise, what students might be sharing. How can we go further than that? And bringing in relevant research is a great way. Again, connecting with video, other credible sources, that to where students can really see what I'm learning can apply to the real world in certain ways. And in so many ways, are not limited, but we can share some examples and really connect those to the real world with what we're teaching in the classroom. And that can make the content much more relevant for students, to where they grasp that idea and really engage with it much more. So when we're grading, I'm sorry, Michelle, can you go back to the last slide? And such as just referring to the rubric, providing feedback on strengths and opportunities for growth, clarifying concepts, we can ask questions, we can refer to other resources, whether they are in-house, such as writing centers, but also external resources. And then the feedback that you share when we offer grading feedback, there's a huge difference, as you see on the top right, an example of great job. You did really well in this discussion, and then the student may get a perfect score, but they don't really know why they get a perfect score. What did they do well, to where they can reuse that feedback and apply it to other classes in order to be successful there. So when we elaborate a little bit and really connect more with the content, we can point out specifics. You covered X, Y, Z in great detail. Maybe here's how you could have dug in further. How can you use this resource to share some examples with us and engage further with your peers? So there are a lot of critical thinking questions that bring out a deeper understanding of the content. We can provide tips, of course, as I mentioned, sharing resources, tying up loose ends, expanding the conversation, and that goes really in grading feedback, but also within discussions. We can ask follow-up questions, and what I love to do in my classes is I don't just reply to one peer. Let's say John posted on our weekly discussion. I integrate other peers too. I'll say, hi, John, in class. And then toward the end, I'll ask some questions. I'll say, John, what do you think in class? What are your thoughts? Please share, or share some experiences, just to try to bring everybody together. Next slide. And here you'll see another example of low versus high cognitive presence, as is very evident here. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the first one is just, kind of cut to the chase and a little more vague than some students might prefer, and really not helpful as far as that personal and professional development goes. In that second example, you can see this announcement posted that really goes back to giving specifics. Maybe we saw common themes and trends within classwork, and we want to point out and get students to that next level. And this is what we can do via announcements, sharing extra tools, resources, and other content to really expand our mind. Thank you. Next slide.
Thank you, Dr. Rabior. So while we felt confident that we were sharing valuable information with instructors, we wanted to know whether it made a difference in outcomes. We examined this research question in a few different ways. We looked at retention and success among students, and indeed, we found that successful application of all three components resulted in improvement for both of these outcomes. Next slide. First, when looking at student success, we found that among instructors who completed the entire series of modules, success rates in classes increased from pre-treatment to post-treatment measurements, 79% to 82%. This suggests that completion of the presence modules made a marked difference in student success. And second, when looking at retention, we found that among instructors who completed the entire series of modules, drop rates in classes decreased from pre-treatment to post-treatment measurements 15% to 11%. This suggests that completion of the presence modules resulted in greater retention. We also examined instructor performance, finding that instructors who were categorized as high performers saw the biggest improvement in their courses after completing the training and applying the strategies that have been elaborated. We examined 3 different types of performance reviews separately: end of course survey responses from students, evaluations from the faculty support development team, and instructional quality reviews from fellow faculty members, categorizing the upper third in scores as high and the lower third as low, and removing the middle group from our analyses. There were no main effects for course drops for any of these 3 individual analyses, but we did identify a marginally significant interaction on the instructional quality review analysis, such that high-performing instructors, as categorized based on the faculty evaluation scores, saw much bigger improvement pre to post implementation, with drop rates falling from 17.6% to 9.5%. In addition, we took a look at instructor satisfaction. We asked instructors following completion of the series, if you improved your presence, do you believe it increased your teaching enjoyment based on the results? The overwhelming majority found implementation of these strategies beneficial in terms of their satisfaction, with 83% stating yes and 12% indicating maybe in response to this question.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. In addition to the quantitative review, we also completed a qualitative analysis of the feedback that was provided both by faculty members who participated in the training and then were able to apply the principles in their classroom, as well as student and, of course, survey feedback. Faculty had overwhelmingly positive comments to say and share, as you can see on the screen here, but one of my favorites came from an instructor, the bottom right there, who shared that my survey percentages for the 122 course were the best I have ever received. According to student responses, it was directly connected to video responses for discussions and announcements. And that was a direct application of what was being taught throughout the modules. That level of enthusiasm that Dr. Majors mentioned earlier, right there with the feedback from faculty, was rewarding enough. But on the next slide, you'll also see that students were just as satisfied with their feedback and comments. And these came directly from the classes where faculty were actively applying the principles learned. And the student satisfaction is equally important and reassuring that upping your game in instructor and presence in the classroom really does deliver an ROI for everyone involved. Some of the things that stand out from the student feedback, just looking at this slide, is how students called out how very active, very engaging, interactive, willing to help, all of that truly made a difference. And now I'll turn it back over to Dr. Harper.
Thank you, Laura, for that perfect segue. And this slide just lets you know that we have a website, instructorpresence.com, where we provide a lot of additional information and resources that you can access at any time. So you'll see an overview of instructor presence, some highlights from our key research. There are pages devoted uniquely to teaching, social, and cognitive presence, information about the developers, a variety of resources and additional links that might be helpful, and some references, as well as additional ways to engage us with the topic. So we do encourage you to visit there and explore. Stephanie now is going to return to provide some information about the professional development series.
If you are interested in participating in this training development series, it is now available. There are 6 modules in total. The first 5 require approximately 40 minutes, and the last module takes about 20 minutes, and you will see even more examples and have a chance to test yourself on these various different categories of presence. So I will drop that link into the chat as well.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. And at this point, I just want to assure anyone that's interested in taking this series, is number one, we do believe it will increase your satisfaction in classroom. And we want to assure you also that if you make the decision to take the series, is that we offer you in the modules very, very specific and diverse strategies so that you can find something that you'll feel comfortable with so that you can provide additional help in all three areas of instructor presence. The content's also very interactive to make sure that there's a clear understanding of what each of the presence is, going back to, again, the predetermined beliefs sometimes that we have about what instructor presence is. And we want to assure you that we've really, really tried to provide poignant information that will fit you, your personality, your belief system, etc. And we, of course, always ask that if you have new ideas, let us know. We're always happy to implement those because obviously, as we continue to move on, there's more and more technology and more ideas. So the other thing that I want to make sure, if anyone is interested, or if you start sharing this link, or your institution starts discussing this, is that this is not a one area of presence deal. What we found is that you really, really must take all the modules. All three modules have to work together. Your students need to understand and not feel confused when they walk into your classroom. That creates feelings of safety and they understand and they're not questioning themselves. Social presence starts to provide you that trust that you need to move on. And that's, I know in our particular institution, week one is our huge week that we have to go in and really make sure students are starting to trust us. And that social presence piece is the one that leads to cognitive, so that students feel comfortable and they don't feel intimidated to ask you questions, to explore things and maybe be wrong and be okay with that. But all three of these are necessary. So taking shortcuts, we really encourage you not to do that as an individual or as an institution. We really strongly believe it takes all three of these areas to have success in implementing this into your own institution. I also want to just kind of put out a little kudos to the group here and let you all know that this is also not just recognized with our institution. This training has now been recognized with the Online Learning Consortium's 2019 Effective Practice Award, which we are truly grateful that they acknowledge this work and the importance of this work as we continue to advance what we know. And even at this time, this team is actually working on further analysis on sustainability. And all I can say right now is that's looking really good. So I think this is a really great way for you or your institution to just dive in a little deeper and see how important it is to have all three of these areas to help your students increase their success, help your instructors enjoy teaching more, you know, improve retention, reduce isolation, and even now in this time of COVID, even more important, but we believe important all the time. So now I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Rabior to share our contact information as well as to be the key moderator during a Q&A time, but we'll all be available to answer your questions and want to just express our appreciation that all of you would come to this, because we do think that this research and this ongoing research is highly important to the success of our students and your students. Sandra?
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, so just, I'm not going to dive into it. You will see that the references and then image sources, our contact information at the top, and then also our Facebook link that you can contact us through.